In the late 1960s, Ford unleashed an engine so brutal, so revolutionary, that NASCAR outlawed it in fear. This wasn't just power, it was a ticking time bomb of raw horsepower, wrapped in secrecy, scandal, and a shocking betrayal that changed racing history forever. Today, we reveal the explosive truth behind the banned Boss 429, the engine too powerful for the track. What did Ford hide? Why was it killed before its prime? And how did this mechanical beast become the stuff of legend? Stay till the end, because the final twist will leave you speechless. Chapter 1. The Hemi's Dominance and Ford's Urgent Challenge. Let's rewind to 1964, a turning point in NASCAR history. At the time, Mopar was struggling to keep up with Ford's dominant 427 side oiler. Chrysler had the 426 wedge, but it simply couldn't compete, so they fired back with something radical, the 426 Hemi. This wasn't just an engine, it was a revolution, and it would change everything. As we move through the 1960s, we witnessed the rise of Hemi-powered dominance in NASCAR. The legendary Richard Petty, behind the wheel of the number 43 Plymouth, became a force to be reckoned with. And in what felt like a heartbeat, Chrysler's Hemi cars were ruling the tracks.
The white flag. One more lap to go, and Richard Petty is still moving along easy and strong. Richard had 1 lap lead over second, 2 laps over third and fourth. The crowd cheered as Richard Petty and his number 43 Plymouth hates the checkered flag going away. Richard Petty rolls into the winner's circle as his father did 5 years ago.
But naturally, Ford wasn't about to sit back and watch their rivals steal the spotlight. Ford had their own plans. They knew that winning on Sunday meant selling cars on Monday. So to take on the mighty Hemi, Ford had to raise the stakes. This set the stage for the creation of one of the most legendary engines in automotive history, the Boss 429. But it didn't take long before Bill France, the founder of NASCAR, recognized the threat posed by these new, high-performance engines. By 1965, NASCAR's officials made the decision to ban exotic racing engines like the Ford 427 SOHC and Chrysler, drastically changing the landscape of the sport.
Adopted the rules because we wanted to bring the cost of racing down, and also we hoped that it would increase the availability of high-performance engines, which I believe it's going to.
With Chrysler out of the picture, Ford seized the opportunity and dominated the racing scene in 1965 and 1966 with their 427 FE engine. But even though they were successful, Ford knew that they would eventually need something more powerful and competitive to maintain their dominance. Chapter 2. Crafting the Boss 429, Ford's high-stakes answer to the Hemi. By the late 1960s, it was evident Ford needed a fresh powerhouse to challenge the dominance of the Hemi. Bunky Knudsen, a former GM executive who joined Ford in 1968, set a bold goal: develop an engine that could reign supreme in NASCAR. This urgent directive sparked the creation of the Boss 429. NASCAR's homologation rules required manufacturers to produce a minimum of 500 street-legal vehicles equipped with any new race engine. Ford saw this as a chance to gain an edge, but the path ahead was rushed, disorganized, and enormously costly. The Boss 429 was so revolutionary that its production barely met the deadline. The entire effort was cloaked in secrecy, with Ford engineers operating under the codename Shotgun, a reference to the engine's enormous semi-hemispherical combustion chambers engineered to overpower Hemi rivals. Time constraints forced Ford to outsource assembly to CarCraft, a relatively unknown facility where engines were painstakingly hand-built. To meet the quota, corners were often cut in the frantic rush. Street versions of the Boss were deliberately restricted, fitted with conservative cams and limited intake systems to ensure race engines remain competitive. Many cars rolled off the line with poorly aligned parts, oil leaks, and even incorrect components, clear evidence of the chaotic scramble behind production. Despite the flaws, the underlying potential was immense. A 7-liter powerhouse capable of producing over 500 horsepower in race trim, a force so formidable it prompted NASCAR to impose new restrictions. Ford's risky bet paid off. though the Boss 429 emerged less as a refined masterpiece and more as a raw, untamed behemoth forged in urgency and controversy. The 429 was originally designed to take on the Hemi and put Ford back on top in NASCAR. This led to the creation of the Boss 429 Mustang. But there was a problem. Ford struggled to get the 429 into production quickly enough. As a result, they ended up running the 427 tunnel port engine in the early part of the 1969 NASCAR season. Eventually, the 429 was ready, and Ford's NASCAR team began making some serious noise with it. Chapter 3. The All-Star Cast and Dominance in 1969. In 1969, Ford made a huge move by luring Richard Petty away from Chrysler. For the first time, Petty was driving a Ford car, and the familiar Petty Blue was now Ford Blue.
Here Petty drove his '69 Ford in a 6-lap victory over a starting field of 32 at speeds topping 130 miles an hour.
This change brought an all-star cast to the Ford camp, including drivers like Cale Yarborough, David Pearson, Donnie Allison, and Leroy Yarborough. The result? Total domination in NASCAR. One of the key factors contributing to Ford's newfound success was the 429. This powerhouse engine was paired with a custom-designed Holley carburetor known as the Dominator. This carburetor was tailored specifically for the 429, and it helped propel Ford to victory at places like Atlanta, where Cale Yarborough claimed a win in the new Mercury Cyclone.
Around the final turn and down the home stretch, the checkered flag is up for Cale Yarborough. Everybody standing, and he receives the checkered, and here comes David Pearson around, and he gets the checkered also. He finishes.
Hello again, Cale. Last year, this year makes it 3 straight. What kind of a race was it?
This was a hard race. For me, it seemed like the longest race I've ever run. I'd get out in the lead, and even one time we had 2 laps, but and I just tried to play it cool, but everything went good. The pit crew, the Wood Brothers, did a fantastic job, and this new Mercury Cyclone with the Hemi engine did a great job, and everything concerned.
Chapter 4. The Boss 429's struggles on the street and drag strip. With all of its success on the NASCAR superspeedways, you would think that the 429 would be just as impressive on the street and at the drag strip. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Despite being one of the most powerful engines ever developed by Ford, the 429 Mustang struggled to get into the 13-second range in the quarter mile. The 429's performance issues became apparent when professional drag racers tried to use the engine. Many were disappointed with the engine's sluggishness, and it failed to live up to expectations on the strip. So, what went wrong? Sam Oxier Jr., a drag racing legend, spoke to me about his experience with the 429, and he shed some light on its shortcomings. According to Oxier, the Ford engineers had tried their best to tame the NASCAR race engine for street use, but the modifications didn't quite work. They installed a 735 CFM Holley carburetor, switched to a hydraulic cam, and made other adjustments. But the engine still wasn't responsive enough for either street use or drag racing. The most significant issue was the engine's massive Hemi-style heads. On the racetrack, these heads were a huge advantage. But on the street and at the strip, they proved to be a hindrance. The ports were too large for the engine to generate the necessary torque, which made it sluggish and unresponsive in real-world conditions. Even after the engineers released a new version of the engine with a mechanical cam and lighter rotating assembly, the T-Code engine, the 429 still failed to perform in the way people had hoped. Chapter 5. The Revival and Legacy. Despite its early struggles, the 429's story doesn't end in failure. In fact, this engine would eventually make a significant comeback in the 1970s and 1980s. One key moment in the engine's history came in the mid-1970s, when NHRA outlawed Ohio George Montgomery's turbocharged 429. Montgomery had modified the engine with twin turbos, and it was performing at an astonishing level. He went on to win the 1973 and 1974 Gator Nationals with the turbocharged 429. NHRA, understandably, wasn't thrilled about the performance advantage, so they banned it from competition. The real turning point for the 429 came in the 1980s. In 1982, NHRA introduced a 500 cubic inch engine rule, and this sparked a resurgence in interest for the 429. Bob Glidden, one of the most successful drag racers in history, began building cars with the 429 engine. Glidden and his team built a championship-winning car and started dominating the Pro Stock division. Between 1985 and 1989, Glidden's Boss 429-powered Ford Mustang claimed 5 consecutive championships.
Starting line, the Pro Stock's ready to go. This man has been having lots of problems all season long. Bob Glidden is beginning, though, to get his Ford EXP sorted out.
This engine faced its share of challenges early on. It has since achieved legendary status in Ford's legacy. It may not have been the immediate success many expected, but it stands as proof of Ford's unyielding commitment to innovation and competition. Whether dominating NASCAR, hitting the drag strip, or powering street cars, the 429 made a lasting impact on the automotive world. With the passage of time, the 429 has become celebrated as one of Ford's most iconic engines. From its beginnings as a NASCAR contender to its later resurgence in drag racing, it continues to represent Ford's passion for performance and engineering excellence. That's the surprising story behind the 429, a misunderstood powerhouse that ultimately earned its rightful place in automotive history. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly appreciate your support. Thank you for watching.